Thank you, and can I thank the Cancora for giving the opportunity to raise this important issue. Minister, I want to raise the issue of two girls, a 9-year-old and an 11-year-old girls who urgently require access to assistive technology for the visually impaired so that they can access a full education. As you are aware from previous correspondence, despite extensive difficulties relating to their vision, both girls have now difficulty in accessing the assistive technology they require as a result of their visual impairment. These young girls have been denied the support that they need because they cannot get a visiting teacher to sign off on the request for this equipment, because it is being claimed by the National Council for Special Education that these girls do not have access to a visiting teacher. When we pointed out that they did in fact previously have access to a visiting teacher, the response that has been given was that they only received this informally. The claim is being made that the access to the visiting teacher was never officially provided. But the family were never informed that this was not officially provided, and the Freedom of Information file contradicts this position. They've engaged with the visiting teacher on an ongoing basis, and the visiting teacher had access to medical reports, etc. But now, when they need a signature, the NCSE are claiming that the support to date was unofficial, and that as a result the vital equipment cannot now be authorised. Despite a wealth of paperwork and reports being submitted, clearly showing the support provided to both children by the visiting teacher, it has been claimed that this was, and I quote, informal support that was given in an informal fashion. Now, Minister, both of these children have received access from the visiting teacher for the visually impaired since they were both toddlers. The visiting teacher went to their home, carried out assessments, gave advice, wrote reports for the school and provided support in preschool. Yet they are still being asked to believe that this access was informal. But even if we did accept that, and we don't, why should this in some way prevent them accessing the support that they clearly need? These children have been assessed by the National Council for the Blind, NCBI, as requiring specific technology for visually impaired, and these girls cannot function in school without this specific support. The National Council for Special Education is accepting that these visually impaired children do need assistive technology to function in school. But the family are being urged to accept assistive technology appropriate for children with dyslexia rather than that for children with a visual impairment. How can anyone stand over a situation where the necessary technology, which would vastly improve the day-to-day school life for these children, is being refused? An application for assistive technology for the visually impaired was submitted 14 months ago for visual equipment, but that application has sat there since because of the failure to sign off by a visiting teacher. Yet, Minister, you've told me in your replies that the family can still access the support of the visiting teacher, but just not get a signature. Instead, the state is prepared to spend public money to provide basic assistive technology equipment which is not fit for purpose for these children, both of whom who have been diagnosed with a rare genetic condition. Minister, the state's failure to provide appropriate assistive technology now results in these children being unable to access the full curriculum, a basic right for every child in this country.
Thank you. Deputy Minister for Minister reply.
Thank you, Deputy, for raising this topical this afternoon. I know that it's a matter that has frustrated you for not an insignificant amount of time, and indeed you raised it on radio, I think, on Saturday also. So I know that you have this particular family in mind when you're discussing the assistive technology scheme. And what I want to say to you, and I will talk about the assistive technology scheme in a little more detail, but what I do want to say to you is that I am confident that there will be a satisfactory resolution to this in the coming days. I have spoken with both the NCSE and the department in relation to this. I know that they're in close contact with the family and indeed with the school. You probably know the way this works, Deputy, in the sense that if the school has the resources itself in the first instance to provide assistive technology, then it has a duty to do that. But if it doesn't, then it should approach the NCSE for bespoke equipment, as you say. I mean, as Minister for Special Education and Inclusion, it doesn't make sense to me that equipment will be given to a child with an additional need in circumstances where that equipment is not fit for purpose. You're saying to me that these two girls, the 9-year-old and 11-year-old, are visually impaired, they have a rare genetic disorder, and there's no point in them having equipment that they can't use. So I completely concur with your point in that regard. And as I say, I am liaising closely with the NCSE and the department in relation to it. The assistive technology scheme is a really, really useful tool for children with additional needs. Last year we had about 3,766 children who availed of the scheme. This year we have 3,293 to date, and we've actually put in an extra 2 million in the budget 2023 for the very circumstances that you outline. Now there obviously is a process there. I'm not entirely clear, other than what you said to me here this afternoon, why this has fallen through the cracks to a certain extent. There could be miscommunication there between the various parties. In the first instance, there has to be a diagnosis. You've said to me that the NCSE accept that diagnosis of a physical or a communicative disability. There then is a recommendation in a professional assessment. There is then a liaising with the CNO in the NCSE who will review the criteria, and then a recommendation is made to the department in relation to the level of the grant that is provided. And the NCSE, through the CNOs, are responsible for processing the applications. So these children, it's very important to me as Minister for Special Education that these children will be looked after. I know that they are working on it over the last number of days, very closely with the school and with the NCSE. I also want to mention that last April the department announced the digital strategy for schools to 2027, and that's a 200 million grant over the period of that strategy, and already 50 million of that has already been provided to schools. And that approach facilitates multi-annual planning by schools to allow them to plan effectively for all of their children. You know, the NCSE and the department and the CNOs need to work very closely together with the visiting teacher service, which you mentioned as well, in terms of providing equipment that is of value to these children with additional needs. Thank you.
Minister, can I say, and this is not a reflection on you, Minister, this is a reflection on your officials in relation to the response that you've given me. Minister, I gave notice 2 weeks ago. This was selected 2 weeks ago for response. It's a very specific case. I gave the actual correspondence reference in the topical issue notice that I've given. I expected a detailed response in relation to this particular case. Now, you are correct, Minister. Yesterday, the principal of the school and the mum was contacted 14 months after the applications went in. It is not good enough. It shouldn't require me to bring it to the floor of the House here for that engagement to take place after being selected 2 weeks ago. But I do take the point that you make, Minister, and I will give you the benefit of the doubt in relation to it, but I do want a specific progress and having this issue addressed. Now, the issue, Minister, here in relation to this is that the National Council for Special Education are saying that there was no formal engagement with the visiting teacher. So I want to put on the public record here that in February 2016, the then visiting teacher, and I have the department-headed notepaper here in front of me, the name of the visiting teacher, who produced a report for the 11-year-old girl when she started in primary school, just before she started, with the diagnosis and everything. And it specifically states that this young girl is eligible for the visiting teacher for visually impaired support in black and white. And at the end of the department correspondence, on their headed notepaper,
The second last sentence says, I will be liaising with the school and home supporting this girl in my role as the visiting teacher for the visually impaired, and the school can also make contact with them if needed. Now that is not any informal engagement. These children deserve the equipment that they have been recommended to receive, and I want to see that happen. Thank you, Minister.
Thank you, Deputy, and I can hear quite clearly your passion in advocating on behalf of these children, and I want to reiterate what I said to you earlier on, that I am very confident, and I can only put it so far, but I am very confident that there will be a satisfactory resolution to this. I have personally spoken to the NCSE and the department in relation to this. I'm glad to hear and encouraged by the fact that there was a conversation yesterday in relation to it with the principal and with the mother, which indicates that there is movement already on this. I don't doubt your bona fides in relation to the correspondence that you outline. You know, I think having such a assistive technology scheme is of no benefit if we're not providing equipment that is bespoke to a particular child. It needs to be particular to the child with an additional need. Having said that, there is a lot of types of equipment already in existence. There's audiological supports for hearing improvements, there's braille equipment, there's computer equipment with modified software for physical or severe communicative disabilities. So there is a range of equipment there. We will need to update over the next number of years the type of assistive technology, and it is under review also. There is going to be consultation around that from Q1 next year, because technology is moving at pace so quickly. So even the assistive technology that we have now will need probably to be updated in years to come to be able to assist children to communicate, because it is about communication at the end of the day, and whatever additional need a child may have. And if that assistive technology equipment is going to assist them in communicating, then there's an onus on us to provide for that. The funding is there. There's an extra 2 million in the budget, as I said. And I just want to reassure you again, Deputy, that I'll do everything that I can to make sure that there's a satisfactory conclusion for this for you. And thank you for your advocacy.